Hello and welcome to Resettled, the ECDC ACC podcast. This episode is brought to you by Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. This month, I spoke with Lual Mayen. Lual is one of the most remarkable people I've ever known. He's a refugee from South Sudan who taught himself to code and design video games in a refugee camp in northern Uganda. He has since become a video game designer, the CEO of his own company, and the founder of a foundation devoted to bringing technology to refugees. He has partnerships with organizations like Facebook and Coursera, and he has been interviewed by seemingly every major news organization in the world. His story is one of resilience, determination, creativity, and entrepreneurial spirit. He's one of the most amazing people I've ever known. You're going to love this episode. Let's get started. Hello, my friend. It's lovely to speak with you. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be part of this conversation for sure.
Absolutely. It's so wonderful to speak with you again. I know it's been a while since we have, and it's great to see you.
I mean, it was like one of my favorite interviews, like the one we had, like, it was like 2 years ago. Like, it was like, I listened to it and the way you just described, even like the morning that we met, it was just, I just felt it. Actually, it's one of the interviews that pushed me so much to work so hard, to like, sometimes when I look at things like that, I just feel like, wow, like there's something more to life. There's something more that we can always do. And it was really an honor for me to like have that conversation in the past with you. So I can't wait for this now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It was fun thinking back to that previous conversation we had those years ago. And I remember that day being so cold.
Yeah.
But it was fun. So anyway, so what I'd love to do is to begin by just asking you to tell our audience where you and your family are from.
Well, yeah. So my name is Lual Mayen, and I'm originally from South Sudan. So my family, they are South Sudanese, and we moved to Uganda, to northern Uganda. That's where I grew up as a child because of the war and the conflict that happened in South Sudan a long time ago. So I spent most of my childhood in Uganda. My family as well in Uganda because of the conflict. They became refugees in Uganda. So sometimes I would definitely say that Uganda is like my second home. Uganda is like my second home. South Sudan is my first home. That's where I was born on the way as my family was fleeing the war. But then most of the time my other two siblings actually, like, they were born actually in the refugee camp in Uganda. So sometimes they would call themselves, we are Ugandan, because that's where they were born. But so that's about me. And then the other part is like, I'm the CEO of Genome Game. Genome Game is a video game company that uses the power of game to bring the global communities together. And I'm also the founder of Lual Mayen Foundation. So it's my initiative that I started recently. So I can't really talk more about it later on. But currently, I came to the United States in 2017, and then left my family back in Uganda. So, but after like 2 years, my family was able to move to Canada. So right now, everybody's in Canada. So yeah, that's all about my family. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I remember, though our audience, of course, won't know, but when we had spoken several years ago, when we first met, I remember they were still in Uganda, and that was something that was weighing upon you that they would be able to leave. So when did they make it to Canada?
In 2019, actually, July. So July is one of my favorite months ever because I came to America in July, and then they also came to Canada in July 2019. Yeah, it was really because, for me as somebody who's an entrepreneur and coming back to the state, it was my dream, or it was something that I really wanted to be able to give my family a new environment, because these are people that have spent the rest of their life, almost 25 years in a refugee camp. And, when I first came here, and when I met you, like, that was something I'm thinking about every day. I live here, and then looking back at my family, they are in a refugee camp, they're also suffering. So I'm like, what is the point of me living here when I see my family, not having the right resources? So I work so hard to connect with the right people to help me, give me resources to find out, what are some of the things that I can be able to do? Because it was a very bad year, especially politically as well, when it comes to refugees, when it comes to policies, immigration policies, for people to move from Uganda to come to America, things like it was so hard. So, but it was a priority for me to be able to find a place where I can be able to be able to move my family. So now I was able to make that happen, and that really helped me with my journey because I'm no longer thinking about how my family are doing. I'm thinking about more. It's a growth process. I'm thinking about myself now. What can I do to be able to grow my company? What can I do to be able to more than now thinking about my family? Because it was something sometime that put us in a situation where we don't even keep growing because family is almost there. So if your family is in a safe space, it helps you to actually think about other more things. So yeah.
Where are they in Canada?
They're in Toronto. Yeah.
All right. So they've been there for now coming up on about 2 years.
2 years almost.
Are they enjoying? Do they enjoy it? What do they make of Canada?
It's good. I mean, it's good. Canada is really good. Reason is because the community there is good. It was their first time to be able to come to an environment like that. So Canada is good. The healthcare system is good. Educational system is good, especially for my brothers. They're going to school there. They're studying. They're they look like they've been in Canada for 10 years now. So they're enjoying it. They sometimes they look at me and then say, okay, if you all can do it, we can also do it. We have the resources that we didn't have now, so they're not here to play or do something like that. I always tell them, it's not easy. It's a work. So they're enjoying it. My mother's doing well. She's happy as well. I remember the first time she came to Canada. The first thing she called me in the morning, and she was like, I'm really so happy. She was so happy to be able in Canada. And you know what she told me? She was like, there's a lot of food here. I wish I can send it back home. And I was like, yeah, that's how, there are people suffering somewhere, but there's enough somewhere. But, that's how the world is. And I'm glad she thought about that because, she thought of people that she left behind. She left friends, she had family members that are still there. And then coming here, there's abundance of things that you already missed before. And then you kind of find them. Yeah.
So how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted your family? Because I imagine you have not been able to see each other at least since then, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it has affected a lot of people, especially when it comes to families, actually. It has affected a lot of people when it comes to when the family is kind of far from each other. There's no way, across the countries to be able to travel and get to see them. Second to that is that, for them, it was like the first year for them to be in Canada, and then something big like that just happened. So it was so hard for them to navigate even. So so I had to be very careful with that and be able to be the resource for them to tell them the thing that they have to do. And the advantage for that was, they were in Canada. The way Canada was handling the COVID situation was really good. So that did not, scare me a lot. That did not scare me a lot. But yeah, that's why I chose a place like Canada, because stuff like that sometimes can be overwhelming. So you need people the way we handled it in America before wasn't really good. So yeah, but it affected everybody. Yeah, but they're staying healthy. They're fine, and nobody's been, yeah.
Do you have a sense of when you'll be able to see them in person again, or is that still just unknown?
Yeah, I mean, when the borders are open, maybe before the end of the year, I'll definitely go there, see them, and miss them a lot. Yeah, especially my brothers. I can't go away and play.
Yeah, of course. So now you've mentioned. I know we've been talking a little bit now, and you mentioned the conflict that prompted your family to move from South Sudan to Uganda. And actually, I imagine at the time it was Sudan, not South Sudan. Yeah. So I wonder, for our audience, can you talk a little bit about your family's time in Sudan and the conflict that drove them to Uganda?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a very good question. as I mentioned that I grew up in Uganda as a refugee, and a lot of people will be like, by how? Like, because uh, refugee, become refugees for so many reasons. Others with climate change, others for conflict, others for like, things that would actually force them to be able to look for a place of refuge, and particularly for my family was affected by the civil war in Sudan. So, the civil war started a long time ago, and then it reached my family in 1993. So when it reached my family, it was really so hard for them. Like, it became like almost a tribal war, where like, thousands of people were killed. So like my family had to like even like, just like walk and like, flee from the violence, walking from, just in the bush, trying to find a place where they can be able to live, be able to find a place of refuge. So even my father had to take a different route, because like, if a woman and a man are, fleeing together and they are ambushed, and then all of them won't survive. So, but sometimes when they find a woman with the children, sometimes they may have, sympathy and leave them. So my father had to take like a different road. And then when they went to Achua, that's the place I was born, which is actually a border between South Sudan and Uganda. And it's a place that has a lot of stone and all those things. So I was born on the way. And it was like almost 250 miles, for them to like, flee the war. It took them, days and things like that. There was no water, there was no food on the way. It was like, as I almost mentioned, like it was like a journey of life and death. Like it was like a journey where like you don't know what tomorrow looks like. You don't know what the next 1 hour looked like. And then sometime when my mother described it, it was just horrible. It was just like nobody deserved to be in that space on the thing that they have never imagined they would be able to come. Like they did not imagine to wake up in the morning and, finding themselves in the bush running away from the land that they love, they were farmers, they were keeping cattle, they were happy with what they already have. That was a home for them. So, and for them to make that decision, it was really, really so hard, and it affected everybody, and it affected even my mother, even she got back on the way, two of my sisters, did not make it, died on the way because it was so hard for them. So it was just crazy. It was just like the war itself has really affected a lot of, people, a lot of South Sudanese, poor community and all this stuff. And that's how it became like a tribal conflict, that was actually ignited by Bashir, by the Sudan government during that time. So that was before the comprehensive peace agreement. Yeah.
You mentioned that your family were farmers. Can you talk a little bit about their life before the conflict? Because you said they were cattle farmers, and
yeah,
but they were respected members of their community, and they had a home and a life. And sometimes I wonder if when we talk about people fleeing from conflict, we sometimes forget about the life that they had before and the life that was taken from them. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's really a very good question. I'm glad you asked about it, because like it's not everybody that like really asks that question, and those are the things that we really have to talk about, because like, the life before the conflict, it's a life that you deserve. It's something that was born of you, and when my family, we have a very big community, like, and those communities have different cultures, and those cultures, they are in a land that they already know, like, what do they do to be able to survive life. It's not just survival, but living life there. For example, like from my community, like where we come from, the place is called Bor, and the reason is because like it floods every year, and that's why the floodings come every year. That's why it's called Bor. So like it's when it floods, there's water, there's stuff like that. So the only thing they can do is like they do fishing. Some of them do fishing. Some of them were cattle keepers. Like my dad used to have like he had more than like maybe 200 heads of cattle. He was like that one alone, that one alone is someone that is respected in the community. Someone that had resources, all the resources. my mom's side as well. My mom's side, my grandfather was also like a cattle keeper. He was like having a lot of cattle, everything like that. And even when my father and my mother met, during that time, and this is something like, especially in my community when it comes about, empowering women, like it was so hard during that time because women are people that, for them, what they have to do is like maybe uh, go, in house things that they can be able to do. But then my mother was like, she was like working so hard in a way that even my father used to live with her at their home. So it was really so hard. Like it was just an amazing life that they would be able to like tell me every time. And there's a lot of people ask me every time like, why do you talk about your mother every day? Because of like the hard work that she has done like in our life, or even before I was born. Even like I used to hear stories, even like in South Sudan before the war, they were working together, collectively together, to be able to like raise a family. So it was like for them before the war, it was like that's the memory, that's the whole thing that they talk about, that's that's what they deserve. But then in the morning you see like the conflicts coming that you don't know is coming. And then you leave what you love, you leave all your cattle, you leave all like, land, you were growing crops and things like that. You just leave everything there and then head to a place that you have no idea whether you're going to reach or not. So it was a life for them. It was a beautiful life, even every time, like right now, my father asked me, like, I want to go back, I want to go back there, like, cause that's the life that he has lived, so yeah.
I can't imagine having to leave all of that. That, like you say, this is a family that has built a beautiful life and is respected in a community, and then simply has to leave and abandon that. And the degree to which a family would have to feel almost lost or adrift, I can't imagine that. So how long did it take them to make the journey from where they had lived and the community that they had to getting down to Uganda?
Yeah, that's a very good. I'm pretty sure it took them like at least the journey. Pretty sure like took them about 2 years actually.
2 years, wow.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, it took them. Yeah, it took them because like they were like that war like was like they moved from war. And then they had to like, sometime like on the way, and then they will rest for like a month. Then tomorrow morning, there is also another, it was like so hard for them. It was really hard. Yeah.
Do you know if there was a moment, a specific moment when they decided that they had to leave? Was there something that occurred that made them decide this is the moment, we have to leave now? Or was it something that was slower and they sort of saw coming and they could make a decision?
Yeah, that's a very good. There was no time for decision. It was just like, it's like for them was like even it was like something just for hard. Like, people like the only decision you have to make is to find out where are your children, where are your family members. That's like the only time that you have. And sometimes you don't have to even meet them, as long as you have your children and then you have like, the younger one, you just pick them up and then go on the way. So it was just like, there was no time for decision. The time for decision making was during the journey. So that's where like I know that hey, seeing we are moving from here to another place, we need to avoid maybe they can just predict where where they're rebels or where they're like where they have hard guns and stuff like that. So they would go somewhere and rest, and then and that's where like when they reach Washua actually. When they were resting, they were resting, and then I was born during that time. So it was so hard for them. Yeah.
So they arrived in Uganda. You said probably about 2 years later.
Yeah.
How long did it take before your mother and father found each other?
Well, that's actually again. I'm pretty sure. I think a year later, maybe.
Oh my.
Like, yeah, a year later, yeah. I mean, but that was not that was like not too bad because there were families that could actually take almost 4 years to reunite. There were families that could not even have, don't reunite again because like their family members being killed, those things. Like, it was just so hard. Yeah.
Of course. So your family was this respected family of means and living in this beautiful life, and then they arrive in a refugee camp. Have your mother and father talked to you about the experience and what maybe the emotional experience was for them in going from having so much to having so little and being in a camp? Have they talked about that?
Well, that's it. I mean, yeah, they used to talk a lot. Like, I mean, like they used to talk about like the thing that they really, they would tell us stories. They would tell us stories like the thing that they own, the thing that and the life that they left, that beautiful life that they left, that they love, and the people that they actually know that were actually didn't make it during the journey. It was just as I mentioned before, even I lost my two sisters during the journey, so it was just, to them it was really hard for them. It was really hard for them. And one thing that I really enjoy about my family was like the opportunity for them to let that go and began to like build something in the refugee camp. I mean, like when I talk build something, build a different mindset that kind of help us as children, and then keep that. They did everything. But in the refugee camp, my mom used to like also try to be a farmer, to be able to grow crops and things like that. So being able to like start a new life was really something that really inspired me so much from my family. Yeah, but it was a very hard life for them. It was just so hard. Yeah.
Can you tell the audience which refugee camp it was that your family ended up settling in?
Yeah. So we, first of all, like after that, we went to Mogali. Mogali was a refugee settlement. That was like after Ashura, and then we stayed there. But then in Mogali, we had to like again leave because of the LRA, the Law Resistance Army. So in Uganda, so they start like getting refugees and stuff like that. I think most people know about that. And then we had to like move to northern Uganda. So yeah, so then we grew up in Bepi. Then we used to move like because there's a lot of refugees, so we used to move from different refugee camp to different one, Pidi in Bepi. So we moved to like at least 3 to 4 refugees. Yeah.
My goodness, I wasn't aware of that, or I don't remember that from previous conversations that we've had.
Yeah.
For the audience, and I know we don't want to go down this track too far, but for the audience, you mentioned the Lord's Resistance Army. Can you take just a minute, and for someone who may not know, can you tell them just a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Lord's Resistance Army was a very, very dangerous, resistance movement that happened in Uganda. It was around 2000 actually, from 2000 to 2005. Actually, that's like up to 2003. So for them, like they were like fighting against maybe the government. I have no idea why they were. But then they were targeting people from northern Uganda. So, and they were, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of documentaries people can be able to find about that. Right. It was like the worst, rebel leader ever. Because like he had no mission. He was just killing innocent people, refugees. It was crazy. Like this story, like I remember one day, they almost actually arrested my sister she was coming from Numili. And then from there, my sister, immediately when my sister leaves, because she was like riding a bicycle, and then he saw them, and then like other people that were coming after her were arrested and taken by the Lord's Resistance Army, and then it was so bad, like the way they would just beat people up, kill them, recruit them, cut the ears. It was so bad. And I remember that in 2003, I remember my mother coming and saying, hey, everybody's leaving. She was like, we're going to another refugee camp. And I was like, why? Like, everybody was like, why? My dad was not happy with it, with the decision. She was like, I'm not feeling safe here and we have to leave. So we left the refugee camp the next day. And then the following day, they came and actually burned our house down. It was great. I don't know, I don't know how did even my mom just have that, I have no idea. And then we left that refugee camp because we were living. Actually, our house was just next to the river. So, and then it was the next house, and then we left in the morning, and then they came over the next day after we left. They burned the house down. They actually even some of my friends that I knew I grew up were killed by them. It was just, these are things that sometimes I don't talk about them, but it was just so crazy, so especially and those are the things that refugee face sometimes. It's more than just, being in a refugee camp or even just fleeing your country. So wherever you go, whatever is affecting that community is still going to affect you. The Lord's resistant army was not going to be saying, hey, these are South Sudanese refugees. They were actually killing, Ugandans, actually northern Ugandan. But then there were refugees there. They just started killing everybody. So it was it was a very bad moment. So just feeling that you flee the war and then you came back to another place that has a war. It was just crazy, Yeah.
Your story becomes more complex and fascinating and difficult every time we talk about it. Mm-hmm. I can certainly appreciate that these are probably not things you talk about all that much. And thank you for sharing them, though, because I think it provides people with insights mm-hmm. and depth that they need so badly, and that I need certainly so badly to hear. And the willingness that you have to do that is amazing.
Thank you. I think that's really slowly by slowly you get to feel comfortable and talk about things. And I think because the reason is it's for people to understand the journey. And I think that's where even my inspiration comes from. Slowly by slowly, I think the biggest thing that we can do as a society is to have empathy. And empathy is something that is built on experiences. You can hear experiences, the experiences that you cannot live them because you're in a different environment. But if you are an open-minded person or a policymaker or something like that, the only way you can be able to engage is to listen, is to also understand what the journey is like. Because if you don't know what the journey is like, you're going to be okay, the world is flat. Everybody is the same. But everybody is not the same. Everybody has different journeys. Everybody has different experiences. Refugees have different experiences. Refugees themselves have faced different experiences, right? So, and that's why, things like this are the things that make us who we are as humans. It's all about, the journey. It's all about understanding what, and that's where when I'm making my game, I'm okay, what is my mission? What do I want people to understand or learn from this? When I'm sharing my story, it's what is somebody going to learn from this? What are they going to take away from this? And as we're talking about this, and I'm glad that, the center is able to do podcasts like this, because I think it's something that enlighten us is actually, as people from the continent or everything, or immigrant or everybody around the world, that, we have different stories to tell. We have different experiences, and we can use those experiences to be able to create a sustainable future for other people, right? My experience is my experience. I don't want anybody to experience it. But what am I doing about it so that somebody does not experience? Because it's the same thing that is going to happen. I just talked about the Lord's resistant army, but what can we be able to do about it? It's not done. I'll just talk about refugee crisis. It's not done. It's not going to get done. But what am I doing as a person that has experience in that? What are we doing as a diaspora to be able to help people back home? As I talk about the story of my mother when she came to Canada, and she was like, wow, there's a lot of food here. What are we doing about it to be able to give the people that she lived with to get that food, that enough resources? We live in a, for me, I call myself so privileged right now. So, because I'm not the only person. There are over 78 million refugees around the world. What have I done to be where I am today? I've worked so hard, yes. But, what can I be able to do that, we can be able to share stories, be able to so that the community does not, or the society does not look at refugees as a burden to the society. themselves because it's our people. The only way we can do about that is when you do it, sharing the experiences. And I think that, it's very important that, when we talk about the thing that I experienced and talking about them and highlighting people and telling people the depth of it, the inside of it, or so that people can be able to sit back and just say, oh, wow, this is something that, that they have to go through. Yeah.
You mentioned your game just a second ago, and I really want to talk a lot about your game. However, to get to the game, it's, I think, important to talk a lot, at least a little bit about how you came to be able to create games and your background and how, because that part of your story is, I think in life you talk to a lot of remarkable people and you meet people who are interesting and do interesting things. This part of your story is among the more remarkable things I've ever heard across anyone I've ever known. So can you talk a little bit, so you're living in a refugee camp. Can you talk a little bit about your introduction to games?
Yeah, that's thank you. I mean, it's, and I think sometimes I just ask myself sometimes, okay, like I'm just putting myself where I am today, like in Washington, D.C. right now. And I'm like, have I ever imagined that this is something that is actually going to get me here? No. And I ask sometimes the best things is that, like, I remember when I was a kid, when I was in the refugee camp, I was so creative. That's one thing I can remember. And I can assure people that at least that it doesn't matter where you are, there is that human talent. So when I was a kid, growing up in a refugee camp, I think the only thing we used to do is like waking up in the morning, go play football. There was no go to school, maybe go to the bush and get like mango fruits and, and things like that. Those like the few things that we can be able to do back in the refugee camp. But other than that, as I was growing up, I was really so creative. I remember I would get box. I would get like box, and then I would create actually like I would create a screen out of a box, and then I would put a paper bag on the box, and then in the evening I would use a candle. And then people would actually come back home and then they watch the movie that I actually created. Like, I would create scene, I would cut them, and then people would look at the shadows. Like over 50 people could come every evening to my household, like in my environment. Maybe we'll sit down and then I'm just like, and they're watching like a cartoon movie that I created using boxes from the screen that I made at night. And it was like one of the best entertaining things, everyone was like, when is the next show? And then and I would just go and create stuff. So I was like, when I was born, there was that creativity in me. Like, that's something I would say, there was that creativity. But then I remember there was a refugee registration. So they were registering new refugees. And then my family was going for the registration. And then during that registration, that was around 2008, 7. During that registration, they were, they were like by the UNHCR. So they were using computers during that time. And then I went, so we were in the line. And then I saw this person was using a computer and I was like, wow, what is that? Like, I've never seen something like that. I'm seeing somebody using it. So I asked my mom, I was like, what is that? And she was like, that's a computer. I'm like, how did you even know it as a computer? You've never been to school. So that's a moment that was my first time seeing a computer in around 2007, 8. And then from there, I was like, wow, I want to use that. Because like with that creativity in mind, I just felt like this is something that I want to use one day. Or like I see my mind, I was like, I want to use this one day. I don't care how much it's going to take me, or I don't care what it's going to take me to get there, but I just have that feeling of that I just want to have to use it one day. So 3 years later, I came to my mother and I was like, I want to buy a computer. And she looked at me, she's like, what are you talking about? There's no money to buy a computer. There's no place where you can charge a computer. There's no place where you can learn how to use a computer, like all those things. And to me, I was like, oh, wow. I mean, that's like, what am I going to do with it? Am I just going to keep it in the museum or things like that? There's no even money. But then because she was a mother to me, she didn't discourage me. She worked 3 years looking for $300 to buy from me a computer. So during those years, I even forgot about it. I didn't know that I even asked my mom for a computer. But after 3 years, she came and she was like, hey, this is $300. You can use it to buy a computer. That was a moment that changed my life. I was like, wow, like now what is next? So when will I try to, because the reality now comes to life. Now I have the money to work 3 years, looking for $100 in a refugee camp. Now I have to buy a computer. Now I have to find where to charge it. Now I have to learn how to use it. It was so intense. And then I asked myself, I'm like, if my mother could work so hard for 3 years to find $300 to buy from the computer, how about me? If she can be able to, flee the whole war to get us to a refugee camp, say, how about using a computer? I also have my brothers that are following me. If I don't use this, next time they're going to come to my mother and say, hey, I want something. And then you know what she's going to say? I bought one a computer and he's not using it. So, so I become like a block now to my brothers because I asked something so like those are things that I start thinking about. And then I start like, well, I got this, I'm going to use it. And then I start like doing research. So I found a place where I can be able to charge my computer. That is like a center in a refugee camp that I have to work 3 hours every day to go and charge my computer. And I would work every day, go charge my computer, come back home, listen to music, and then open the computer, try to use it. It was so hard. Even who's going to teach me? And then I start like downloading offline tutorials. And then like tutorial just how to use, Microsoft, how to open a computer, things like that. So yeah, that was actually the first time I interacted with a computer. And then from there, I know the worst thing used to be like, I would go to like charge my computer and I find that there's no power in the generator. And I work 3 hours, I have to come back home. And that happened often, like almost 60% of the time. Like I would go there, the generation is not working. Sometimes it's going to be raining on the way. It was just like, it was just crazy. But I was happy with it. I was happy. I was like, cause I was like the only kid in the refugee camp that had a computer. Like, so I was really I was so happy with it. I did not care what else it took me to get there. But I remember like the first time I interacted with video game was like, my friend installing for me Grand Theft Auto on my computer. And then I came back home and then I opened the desktop on my phone. Like, it's a video game. I never thought video game were crippled by people. I just like, they just fall from heaven. I was like, what is this? And then I start like, exploring it, using it. And then from like, wow, like I was so happy with it. I enjoyed it. That was like the next thing I could do every single day. So then from there, that's where I found like really the power of games.
So how did you begin to learn to code? Because it's one thing to learn how to use Microsoft, the Microsoft Office suite. It's one thing to learn to play games. It's another thing to build a game. So how did you start to learn to build games?
I think, that's a really good question. I think for me was finding my passion first. So my passion was actually my mission. So my passion came from my mission that actually forced me to code. So like in a way that, when I started playing Grand Theft Auto, I realized that game is so powerful. I realized that games are really they're really amazing tool to tell stories because they are interactive. So when I started playing the game, and then I realized that, I'm from South Sudan, a country that has almost 73% of the population are young people. They're all young people. Some of them were born in war, they were raised up in war. And even in Iraq, you can look at kids, the only thing they know is violence, violence, violence. And then when I was playing Grand Theft Auto, I was like, wow, how about a kid in a refugee camp or somebody from South Sudan playing this game? They feel like that's how things are done. But how about making a video game that can help them make peace or can help them learn about stories or can help them educate themselves? So in that process of playing video game, I began to realize what is the power of game, what can I do? And then from there I was like, wow, I need to create my own game. And then that's when I asked myself, okay, what do I need to do to create a game? How to code, I have to make sound, I have to do graphic design so that I can make it. There was so many things, many things. So and then from there, okay, what is the biggest thing I have to do first? Programming. So then I start getting tutorials, offline tutorials, and then I start learning how to code. Or it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life was programming. like it was like nobody's actually helping me to fix a bug for me. It was so hard. Sometimes I would just leave my computer for a week and then I don't touch it anymore. And then sometimes I would come back. It was so crazy. It was just like it was that moment that I had to like really dedicate myself. Working 3 hours every day. I was so tired. Then I started like learning to code offline tutorials. I had to like go get like a flight drive to like put all the offline because I don't have internet. And I kept on doing that. And then I created my first game. So now,
what language did you learn to code first?
C#, C++, Python. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think So I started using that. It was like, I mean, like I started really far. Even like I started like I thought I was gonna do like Python part first, but then I was like, let me just do like C# and C++ because they are more like on game development is like the biggest thing. So I'm like, let me just do that. It was so hard.
How did you start coming up with sound and graphic design as well? Because so all of those things are very difficult, even in good circumstances. In good circumstances, those are difficult things to learn. So how did you start coming up with the ability to do sound and graphics as well?
Yeah, I had to like teach myself as well. I had to teach myself like graphic design at the same time. I had to like teach myself how to make sound. All those things I had to learn, like a lot. Adobe Audition. I had to like learn like Photoshop, like everything. I had to like learn all of them. So for me to be able to like create my first game,
it's a remarkable story. So when did your game start getting noticed by other people?
So I finished my game actually in 2016, right? That was like around August 2016. So when I made my game in 2016, when I made my game in 2016, so I started like distributing to kids in the refugee camp, right? Sending via Bluetooth, because there was no internet and things like that. But then around August, I thought of something really, I even don't know why I haven't thought about it. I was like, okay, maybe I need to like upload the game because the game was so small. It was really very, very small. So like, I'm like, maybe I need to upload it on my Facebook page as a picture. And then I would tell people, hey, I made a game. So, which is the most crazy idea what I've ever done. So, because it's an APK. So, but I'm like, let me just do it. So I upload the game. And then I was like, hey, I made a game. And then people started downloading it. The next day, it started going viral. Like everybody was sharing it. And I'm like, what is this? Like, I have no idea. So the next thing I'm saying was like an email coming from somebody from Berlin. And so he was like, I want to invite you to South Africa. And I'm like, what? Like, I want you to come and talk about your game. I just downloaded it. It's really a very nice concept. We want to like, my mind was like, and then the next day, email from like, big game companies, like, like a lot of people start like emailing me, like journalists start emailing me. It was just like, I don't know, but it was just like, it just something controlled it. It just like, it just went that way. And then from there, I went to South Africa. And then the next year I was invited to come to San Francisco. So it was like the journey was just like, the movement was just like that,
Real quick, can you talk about the game a little bit? I almost forgot to ask you. Can you tell me the name of the game, and can you talk a little bit about what players were doing in it?
Yeah. So for the first game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So when I made the first game was about peace building, right? So the game was like kids in the camp that like every solution is not violence. So what you have in the game, you have to protect your community from being from hazard, from being killed, people from. So your focus as a player is protecting your community. So that was like the best. That was the basic concept of the first game. So now I'm working on a second version of the first game, which is Salam, the same game. So it's a game that actually put a player in the shoes of refugee. So it's a game that talk about the experiences and the journey of refugees. So what you do as a player, you take a refugee from a war-torn country to a peaceful environment. And then for them to go to a peaceful environment, there is a lot of difficulties that you have to overcome on the way. You have to give them water when they run out of water. You have to give them you have to give them food when they run out of food so that they can be able to so that they can be able to have access to food so they can reach their final destination. It was it's just journey. It's a game that how you understand exactly what the journey of a refugee is. And then the best thing you can do is the first game in the world whereby actually when you buy food in the game, you're actually buying somebody in the refugee camp food. When you buy water in the game, as a player, you're actually buying somebody in the refugee camp water. So all those things are the things that I'm working on the game and help people understand exactly what the journey of a refugee is.
That's amazing. What kind of partnerships are you? Because that's a heavy lift. What kind of partnerships are you building to make that happen?
Yeah, there's a lot. So there's a lot of different partnerships I'm working on right now. I'm working with local organization. So when the game is released, that's where we're gonna be sending the funding to local organization based in refugee camp. We're also having a partnership with the UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, to be able to monitor, evaluate the impact of the game. We also have different partnerships because my company is a business company, so we have different partnerships like Facebook Gaming, Eisenberg, different companies to make sure that the game is working. And actually, the exciting news is that we're going to be working on a PlayStation version of the game as well. So it become a home-based game. So those are things that I'm just working on as a refugee. As I say, I have the opportunities now to be able to do the thing that I love, do the thing that I'm passionate about, and also use my experiences to be able to tell people about the flight of refugees. Yeah.
Do you have a sense? And I know that we're getting ahead of the story a little bit, but that's okay. Do you have a sense of when the game is going to be released, or is that still tentative?
Before the end of the year, pretty sure around December.
That's amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to talking more about that. Anyway, so back to the story. Mm-hmm. You were invited to South Africa out of the refugee camp. Can you talk a little bit about the process of actually traveling from the refugee camp to South Africa and what that meant to you?
Yeah, to me it was really, to me it was really unbelievable. Yeah, for me, first of all, I was wow, this is something new for me. This is something even for me, I need to get my passport, I need to get my visa and all those things. It kind of I didn't take so much because I had so much support and resources coming from the people that were actually invited me. So that was really good. For me, it was just the experience of just leaving refugee camp for the first time, and also going to one of the best countries in Africa, I've never, dream of visiting before. Second to that, I was so nervous that I'm going to be talking about something that I built in a refugee camp. The culture is different. Even my English was it was a different thing. I asked myself, what am I going to talk about? It was just crazy. So I left the refugee camp, went to Kampala, get in a plane, go to Ethiopia, and then went to South Africa. That was Johannesburg, and it was so different for me. The building, people, it was just amazing. Then I remember going to my hotel, and then in the evening meeting all these game designers, at the lobby, and everybody was talking. Everybody was and I met a lot of people that. Even later on, I didn't even know who these people are, but they're really, really very influential in the game industry. People that have been owning big companies and things like that. It was just amazing. I was so shy. I couldn't talk to people. My English was kind of it was so hard. So I went there, and then the next day I was giving a talk, and then I was just, talking about my game, what I was doing, and then after that, everyone was coming to me, and then we just talked. It was a very good, networking event, and then just, then went back to the refugee camp, after it was after 4 days actually. Yeah.
So somewhere in there, you mentioned you were invited to San Francisco. That's to me, if I remember right, that's a big part of your story, and something that seemed like it was going to be amazing, and then something happened. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. It was I remember after that, I went back. I went back to the refugee camp, and then immediately I was invited to like come to San Francisco at one of the biggest, gaming festival, like game developers conference. It bring like over 30,000 people around the world. It was like one of the big. It's like one of the biggest, festival in the world. So for me, like I was invited and say, hey, Lual, you're going to be talking about your game, and I was like, wow, like I was so excited. I'm like, coming to America was like the biggest dream of my life. And this time now, I was gonna come not because of resettlement. I was coming from a perspective like I made something for myself, I create something for myself. And I'm being invited to come and, meet all these game designers. And then I was really excited. And then, the next thing that happened was the Trump refugee travel ban. And that was like the same week. That was the one. That was like the same week. And that was like the first day I tried to give up in my life. Like I almost gave up. I was like, no, I was really like, I was like, my family have tried to like research to America to find better resources, but we could not for like in 20 years, 10 times being rejected for no reason. And then when I got my invitation, I was like, now, I'm going to find my resources because of something that I work for, not just being because of being a refugee, just being resettled or something. But then I remember like, the Trump travel ban, it was crazy, man. I almost gave up. And I remember coming back from home, I was like, I threw my computer down and my mom came to me and she was like, why? What is going on? And I was like, I told her the story. I was like, no, I don't want to like do anything anymore. Like I'm giving up. I'm not gonna program anymore because I don't see anything good coming out of this. This is my best opportunity for me as a person to grow and also build my company. Like, what is going on? Like, why are they not, getting any better? And I remember like my mother like looking at my eyes and she was like, she was like, let me tell you something. Well, I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, we know that you cannot steal water from an ocean. I'm like, what do you mean? So like, when you go to an ocean with a basket, like the biggest basket in the world, and then withdraw water from an ocean, it can never finish. It keep on overflowing, And I was like, what does that even mean again? So like, that's how you are as a person. There's a lot of opportunities in your life. You don't have to give up. There are more coming on your way. You don't have to give up. I know you struggle. I know you work so hard. I know that we work so hard to be resettled. It doesn't work almost in 10 years, in 20 years. Never give up. Keep doing what you love. Another day, like I will pick up my computer, then keep going. And it never took me a month before I got my second invitation to come to the US, which was actually better, which was actually better, So I had to learn, my mother has always been there as an inspiration for me to like really like help me go through the thing that because we are human, we feel like giving up every day. And then you need the right person in your life to always like help you get up and keep doing what you do. And a lot of people ask me today, hey, Lual, you're in DC, you have your own game company or you started your own foundation, you live in one of the best, cities in America. Like this, like you're a very successful person, like are you a self-made person? And I'm like, that's a very good question. But the day my mother bought for me a computer was the day that disqualified me to become a self-made person. Why? It doesn't matter what I'm doing today. Yes, there's so much work I'm putting into it. It was more than just buying a computer. But that day was a day that actually meant that somebody in my life, realized what I can be able to do. And that they deserve that credit. I'm here today because of all my partners that are actually working so hard to be able to be where I am, So being a self-made person is never in my definition of life. Because like there are people in my life that help me to be where I am. There are people that give me food. There are people that, and they are really very important in our entrepreneurial journey, as refugees as well, and things like that. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you had a second invitation, and that's the one that got you to the US. What was the second invitation?
So what happened in the second invitation was actually, so there was an organization that actually having an accelerator program. Actually, I love that. I love talking about that. They had an accelerator program where they were actually selecting companies around the world that use the power of technology to bring communities together. And then from there, I remember connecting with the World Bank. And then they were like, the World Bank was like, wow, we need to bring you, we're going to help you with the visa, and then we're going to bring you to America. I'm like, okay, wow. So I came here, and then that's how I started my company. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's around the time that you and I first met.
Yes, exactly.
Because I remember we first met when I was running an event series on refugee challenges around the world. And so we had one that was about the Syrian refugee crisis, and we had one that was about refugees from Africa, and we had one on the Rohingya challenge. And I remember you came up to me right afterwards, and we started chatting. And I remember thinking, I told my wife later, I just met the most remarkable person, and that's been a lovely thing that we've been able to continue this relationship over time.
I enjoy those conferences though. I wish when the world come back together, I wish we could do more stuff like that. Like there were, did we do that at the human rights? Is it like there was a space in downtown near, I don't know where that space was. I remember I came back and we had a panel, right?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, yeah.
So we had yep. You joined a panel for that, and then the podcast later. But that was at Human Rights First, and that was in partnership with a couple of organizations. One was Human Rights First, and the other was Veterans for American Ideals.
Exactly.
And that's where I used to be a U.S. naval officer, and that's where I linked up with them, was this Veterans for American Ideals, which was it was a wonderful partnership. And I feel the same way. I miss those kinds of events, and I miss those kinds of conferences. And when the world does come back, I look forward to being able to organize and participate in those again. I miss it so much. So over the time that you have been in Washington, D.C., you have gone from being someone who was just arriving in Washington, and you had to find ways to navigate and build a life for yourself here. Can you talk a little bit about the process of navigating that and building yourself into someone who now has this massive reputation and are very well known? How have you done that?
Well, that's a very good, that's it's not a good story that make a good business. And it's not a good business that make a good story. Why? Because when I came here, I had a passion. I knew this is the only thing that I have. And the reason was because I wanted to make sure I connect with the right people that can be able to get me where I want to go. And so that has always been the prayers for my mother, to be able to connect with the right people that can help me, push me, and so on. I believe that, being in America is a privilege for me. It was a privilege for me. There's a lot of kids in the refugee camp that would actually love to be where I am today, and they would actually utilize the resources that I have, and to me it was, okay, I'm here now. What can I do next? I came here when I already have an idea of what the society look like, or what the community look like, or what I want to achieve look like. I did not come directly from a refugee camp and being overwhelmed by the thing that I found in, right? I came here knowing that, if I wanted a life like this, if I would just come here to not utilize the resources that I have, I would go anywhere. I did not come here to be surprised by the tallest building in the world. I was not here to be surprised by living in LA or living in Washington, D.C. And I came here to understand what is a worth and what is a value, what I can be able to contribute to whatever I can be able to bring to the table. And that's okay, this is a game industry. I'm creating something new. What are the best way for me to connect with the right people in this industry? Because it's a very hard industry. It's a very competitive industry. It's very hard. So, but for me, it was okay. My biggest point here is like, let me put myself in a place where I can grow gradually and connect, like, connecting like with people like you. It was really amazing. During that time, I was able to learn every single day. I remember the first time I met that, I was just navigating. I remember like, and then the same year, I remember that's how I was. I got named the Global Gaming Citizen in 2018. It was like, it just go fast, and then stuff like that. So my biggest thing was just to make sure that I connect with the right people. And I also like use the resources and utilize everything that I was having, to be able to get there and being able to like, okay, what do I need as a person, as a business? I need to connect with people that are going to help me to maybe like, what are the things that I need to learn when it comes to American business? Because it's a different perspective now. Like it's not being running a business. Yes, crazy. A glass of making taxes, like a glass of like, being able to like all those things, being able to like, I had faith. Yeah, I had to like believe in the process. I also had to like, know that, this is going to take time, but this is worth it. This is like, I cannot make it by myself. I can make it by connecting with the right people that will get me to where I want to be. And I think that was like the biggest thing that I've ever done great, in my journey, because if I couldn't do that, there's a lot of simple things that takes us away, a lot of simple things that come and then we are gone, like we're just overwhelmed by life. But I think that thinking about my family and having the right people, incredible mentors in my life that were able to mentor me and also give me advice to be able to like, keep going. Yeah. And then the rest is always there. People will always follow what you're working on. It's a society we live in. So people will always be there, like to like, follow the journey, enjoy the journey with you. Some of them will not like it, some of them will like it, but that's none of your business as a person. Just keep on growing. And then, it's been a great journey. I love it so far. I really like it. And I wish that there's more to come. I feel like there's so much more that I need to do, like, and connect with more right people. Like it's a marathon, it's life. It's something that keep going. No man is an island. You can't do stuff by yourself. So you have to like have a community of people who support you. Yeah.
It's that is among the more difficult lessons, I think, even for myself, that this is a marathon. And you hit on two such critical lessons, like I just said, it's a marathon, and that you're not an island. And those are difficult lessons for people, myself included. Now, since I first met you, I've seen you across almost every major news organization. You've been on, I'm trying to think, you've been on CNN, you've been in the Washington Post, BBC, Al Jazeera. You have been everywhere. I wonder, can you talk a little bit about what that has meant to you, and what has that experience been like for you to essentially, I'm not sure I like using this word, but you're almost an influencer in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, what is that like? And what have you made of it?
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked. I mean, to me, it was, first of all, like it's an honor, recognition are good, awards are amazing, everything amazing. But I think to me, sometimes it's just sustainability. How do you sustain that life? How do you sustain, because like, as you said, the news agencies, they're really amazing because people get to hear my story, more people get to know about, what I'm up to. More people are there to hear about like, what I am contributing to the world. Some people are like, like yesterday, it's called NKH. It's one of the Japanese media, like one of the biggest Japanese media around the world. And then they aired the interview like 2 days ago. Like it's an interview I did with them. And people are emailing me right now from Japan. People are emailing me from around the world, and they're like, wow, like things like that. And the reason what I love about it is that, it's just people get to hear different. I am able to amplify, the voices of refugees. I'm not just going to be talking about my business. I'm going to be like, telling people, hey, refugees can be able to become entrepreneurs. They can be able to become anything they want if we have the resources, right? And to me, I don't value it. So I think to me, it's just like, it's okay, but it's not all I want. It's okay. Like, it's okay for my business. And I can tell you, this is like the best thing I've ever, like, we have over 200,000 people right now sign up for my game just because of all this, because of the media, because of the people, like, following the journey. In business wise, it's amazing. But personally, I'm more critical about it. Like, people begin to develop a certain idea of who you are, like as a society. And then again, like, I'm not gonna live to people's perspective. I never thought that I would be in this environment before. So I'm just gonna be like grateful for what I have today. Making sure that, like, the social media life does not take me, because these are simple things that actually, like, affect us, especially in the generation we're in as a young person. Instagram, Twitter, all those things, they're really amazing. They're good. I use them. I use them for my business. But my thing is, how do I then utilize it for good as well? What kind of content am I supposed to put out there? What kind of, is that a content that is going to allow people to think of different of me, or is it a content of that people can be able to, like, improve and help themselves? And I think that, as you mentioned, it's really amazing to be out there. It's really good to be recognized. It's really good to be, because it helps you as a person, that, that is something that you're doing is needed in the world. It's something that is needed. But then you think about, okay, it's already needed. Now, how do I sustain this now? Like,
yeah.
How do I sustain
is it ever
this?
overwhelming? Do you feel like you're being pulled from every direction at this point? Is it ever sort of too much, the number of requests on your time now?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy though. It's been like, it's been like crazy, but I'm enjoying this. There are a few things that I'm enjoying, but I love, when it comes to, like, public speaking now, I love it so much, because, like, I feel like I'm actually developing something that I never thought before, like, that I never felt of doing before. And that's, like, public speaking is amazing. And I never thought I was ever going to do it. But if I'm going to speak to, like, universities, to, like, conferences and things like that. So I'm actually developing something out of my career, which is like being a public, somebody that speak to people, and also, like, giving them something they can be able to relate to, right? So, and those things are always like, and it's so funny, like, a lot of people sometimes, I tell them, like, when I'm not making game, I'm most likely speaking. Like, those are like those are like two things that I do. The reason is because I'm beginning to develop that passion again, because I feel like, there is so much more that we can do. And I've never thought you mentioned a word, you're becoming like an influencer. Like, it's I mean, like, for me, I never thought of that before. But, to me, I feel like, even with public speaking, it's giving me an opportunity to actually share, because I've been in a space before where I feel like I wish I had a voice. I wish I had, more people listening to what I say. Because the reason why I'm thinking about, because I feel like I have so many stories that I want to say, but because I don't have the platform, I'm just going to deal with it, right? And to me now, I feel like, in the future, as I'm growing, it doesn't happen in the morning, you have to put in the work. I'm not going to wake up in the morning and be like Dwayne Johnson, like, it's a work. So in the future, when I'm developing something that people care about, and then that means that I have a platform where I can even, support people that, need to amplify their voices, refugees and things like that, things that are happening in our society, things are happening in Africa, things are, like, happening somewhere. Because I am building that community, a platform of people who love what they're following for, what they want to, like, go for. So Yeah, I mean those are the advantages of being out there, but it has also disadvantages as well. A lot of disadvantages. So
Yeah, I'm certain there must be.
yeah.
So I know that as we come towards the end of some of our time here, one thing we had talked about the last time, probably a month or so ago when last we spoke, you had talked about how something that's really near and dear to you are challenges and issues relating to diversity and inclusion. And I wonder a little bit if you might be able to talk about what those concepts mean to you and how we might strive to enhance diversity and inclusion in our lives and our careers and our workplaces.
Yeah, this is this is really it's a very important question, especially in our time right now that we are in a way that, I'm pretty sure like all of us, that doesn't matter where you work or where you live, or this is something that we have to always talk about, because this is something that is part of our life. And I wish we live in a society where we don't even have to mention it and talk about it. Like it's like diversity and exclusion. You don't have to talk about empathy. You don't have to even teach people about it. Like things like. But again, that's the world we live in. It's a world where you have to teach something. You have to let people experience something. And when it comes to inclusion, it's really and the best example I can give about that is like, diversity is very important. Inclusion is very important because it helps us, companies or people, or like to be able to like create solution to the communities where those people come from, right? They are also underrepresented communities. They are communities that do not have resources. They are communities that are suffering from different ways, and there is no way you can be able to help them until you understand the problem that they're going through, right? There's no way you're going to give refugees what you want until you experience their life. And the only way is to actually include them. You can include them in decision making. You can include them in anything. You can hire them, because when you hire these kind of people, they are going to bring solution to the problem that your company is planning to solve. I was talking about this the other day with Jump City. So Jump City is one of the biggest gaming companies in the world. It's actually like so the CEO is a former co-founder of MySpace. So so I had this conversation with Chris the Wolf, and he was asking me about like what can we do as a company to be able to. I'm like, I'm glad you didn't ask about it, because this is a really big this investment needed, into like these communities. And the reason is because one, as a person, as a refugee myself, if I wasn't a refugee, I would not be making video games today. I'm honest with that. I would have never had an idea of like, why would I even think about making game to help refugees? Because I experienced it. If they don't understand like where we come from as a person, even when you look at the game environment that I'm working on, the game environment, the characters, everything is about refugees. So I'm developing something that people would feel that is how it is. So I'm including even how they live. And that's the same thing when it comes to like, in America, like they're like, even the cultures, like they're big game where like, the culture, when you look at the game, the characters is based on that culture. It's based because that's why like communities are very important. I'm not going to wake up and I'm not going to make a game about a culture in China because I don't know what that culture look like. So, but for me to make that as a company, I need to hire somebody that understands that culture, that understands that way of living, that understand what kind of environment does it. Is it a tropical environment, environment? Is it like, and that's why because as a creator, and I'm going to say this, as a creator, I can create an environment where somebody is going to live for the rest of their life. An environment, I can create it because somebody is going to immerse itself. I can create a product where somebody is going to like enjoy for the rest of their life because based on what I created. right? And that's why like really biodiversity is very important anywhere. Like even when we talk about radio station, like for example, like in podcast, we need to have people talking about it. How do we experience? What are their experiences as they grow up? What is the work culture? You have to like include all these people because that is the only solution that we can be able to do to create actually product that our communities care about. But then if you don't include these people even in decision making, what happened? You're just going to ignore them. And then when you ignore them, you're creating product that actually, I don't want to say it this way. Maybe you're going to create product that actually does not even match with the way of living. Right. That's where attention comes from. No, you're using a different word, you're using this, like all those things. And that's why like if you had somebody in that community when you were making that decision making, that would have helped you to make the right decision. And I think those are things that we like. That's why to me, I think that's why like diversity is really and inclusion is very, very important.
Absolutely. So I wonder, as you are heading into this critical year for you, and you are getting ready to release your game, and this product that you've been working on for a very long time now.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can talk a little bit about. Your goals for the game and what you're hoping for when you release it later this year. What are your hopes, and what are you hoping that the game will produce, and what do you think you might be seeing from it at this time next year?
Yeah. That's a very good question. I love it. I mean, the game I've been working on for a very long time. I'm really excited to finally release it. I'm really excited to really release it because like I'm also under pressure. Like people want to play the game, people love it. Like when are you releasing it? Because I was supposed to release last year, but because of the pandemic, that has affected people a lot, which has also affected investment as well. Everything just changed. Where like the conversation after the pandemic, the conversation of investment changed from different people. Like, oh, maybe I want to focus on something different, So that kind of like affected us as a company. And then we used that time to actually focus on raising more fund. And now we're working like this. My focus is like, as I said before, like I want this game to be successful. I want this game to, to be one of the best game out there. I want this game to be a continuous game. And I want to like help people understand, have empathy, the plight of refugees and things like that. Then I want to start like maybe creating a new game, after that. But when I release this game, I'm going to be working for it for like the next maybe 5 years, bringing new stuff, putting in different platform, having more people playing it. Like that's, what success look like to me. Like what I imagine, what I want to do every day, what I want to plan for. And then just focus on and actually seeing how the game is actually helping people in real life in a refugee camp, things like that. And then after I release it, I will have time to like focus on my foundation more and more. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. I want to ask you maybe two more things. So can you talk just a little bit about your foundation?
Yeah. So I actually launched my foundation last year, and our focus is actually to help to build technology schools in Africa. Not just in Africa, but for right now, it's just building technology school in Africa to help refugees learn, coding, programming, graphic design, business, administration, all those things. That's what my foundation is focused about. We partner with really big companies. So last year we partnered with Western Digitals. That's where we got our first funding from. And then now we're partnering with Facebook, actually, which we're actually announcing sometime very soon in the next week or so. And then we are partnering with Coursera. Coursera is an online, university where you can get, courses and things like that. So we are partnering with Coursera so that refugees. They actually given over 500 scholarship to my foundation. So like
That's
the
amazing.
reason is, well, yeah, I'm really excited. Yeah, I've been working so hard. We are also like partnered with Unity. Unity is like it's a game engine. It's one of the video game engine where people create video game and things like that. So we are partnering with them to like teach kids how to like code using Unity. Yeah, we are getting our funding there from as well. So my focus is just I have this privilege now of like having these big companies, and that's again going back to inclusion. Like where like the refugee communities have never like been included before. Like we need to give them resources. They need a quality of standard. And that's the thing. Like we are actually partnered with a company called Audience PC. They make one of the best PCs in the world, like really, really best PC. So we're partnering with them so that they can give refugees actually all this incredible PC, powerful PC, so that they can actually start playing video game when they're in a refugee camp, and then we give them internet, then they start like a streaming game, it's everywhere. People can watch them. So they can even start, look at the pandemic. I'm at my house right now, working from home. If a kid in a refugee camp had a good computer, have the skills, have the internet, do you think they cannot work from home? They work from home. They can work from home. And that's one thing that I'm really so passionate about, that my foundation can be able to do this and having all these opportunities. Having Coursera coming in, they can be able to now study online, get any course from any university for 6 months, 1 year, and then they get it. So these are things that I've always dreamed of doing, being able to like give, following the footsteps of my mother. She looked at me, she I don't know what the best word. She saw a potential in me that nobody ever seen before. And then, I'm giving back the same. Like, I have all these computers in my house. I have all these computers in my house right now. Like, it's crazy, but it only took one person to believe in me, to give me all I have today. So I think that's the focus for my foundation, to be able to like give refugee resources, especially in education, like really, really in education, yeah.
Well, it's truly remarkable. I want to be mindful of your time, and I want to thank you so much for joining us. But let me ask you one last question. For listeners who are hearing from you, how can they be supportive? How can they help? Is there anything they can do that would be useful?
A lot. So many things we can do. I mean, like, I'm going to say this, and I love this. You don't have to be a charity to make a world a better place. Each of us have the role to play. The first one you have to do is, if you know a refugee that you have to call them and tell them how amazing they are, how you have learned from them. Sometimes it's a good thing to just to talk to these refugee communities and just hearing their stories. But sometimes to me it's more than that. I think we have to like really call them and tell them how amazing they are, how their cultures shaped you as a person. What have you learned from them, from their experiences? If you do that, you're making a world a better place. That's a very simple one. Second is that, volunteering with organizations. There's a lot of, organization out there where you can be able to like, volunteer with them, teach and things like that. Third, you can, visit our website on lualmayen.org and shoot out an email if you want to become a mentor, because I don't know who's good, maybe someone who's very good at something, you want to become a mentor. That's another way of helping. Now we have Zoom call, maybe you can, mentor some of the kids that are even in my program, just to talk with them. Good way of like, of making a world better place. Donate to like a different organization. It's the best way to like, to be able to like, to help. So like for me, when it comes to like really asking people to help, I ask people a lot when it comes to invest in education. Education is the only thing that, if you know somebody, and education, it's more than just donating money. It can be donating some items that you have. You may have a computer, you may have a, access to like books, you may have access to like, because I think that's where my goal is going to. If I meet the most powerful person right now in the world and ask me like, hey, well, tell me one thing that I want to do right now, and I will do it for you. And that is, I would say that I want you to invest in education, because that helps you to realize that if you're in a refugee camp, you can be able to make your life a better life. You can change your family life. My family is right now in Canada, because of education. My brother's playing football. My other brothers doing computer science. My sisters are doing, so like their life changed because of education. It's not because of like someone giving us food every day. It's needed. It's a resume need. I'm not going to go to school if I'm hungry. I'm not going to sit on like, but those are like really important things. So I think education is really very important. And that's where when someone asks me what can you like, tell people to have with education. And thank you so much, especially something like this conversation is it helping. It's a conversation somebody is going to listen, and it's going to help them, having organization like this, being able to organize things like this. Those are the things that we need in our community. And I think that like we need stuff like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, my friend, you are an amazing person. And not only have you shaped my life, you are shaping lives of people around the world in remarkable, remarkable ways. So thank you so much for joining us. It is an honor to speak with you.
Thank you.